Hello. Our story begins inside the Jedi Temple. Anakin Skywalker was holding a Jedi communication device. It was the 6th anniversary of Qui-Gon's passing, and the Jedi Padawan was preparing for another mission. The device he held in his hands was his own communicator, and he was preparing to contact Qui-Gon Jinn's frequency. Obi-Wan, in the days following his master's death, decided to quote-unquote keep in contact with Qui-Gon by sending him voice messages every other day. Just things he wished he could have said or asked his master. It helped him deal with the death of Qui-Gon, and he gave this trait to Anakin to help him. Skywalker was thinking of the words to say. He was closing in on adulthood, and he couldn't really find the words he wanted to say. He turned the device on and waited. Nothing but air could be heard, which wasn't much aside from a little bit of static buzzing. Anakin rambled into the machine. He said he was conflicted and confused. It was a difficult time to be alive. It was hard to be a slave and then a Jedi. It wasn't easy when there were multiple people vying for his attention. Obi-Wan was a good master, and that much Anakin was sure of, but still, it felt like there were others that could reward him the gift of something more. As a Jedi, he wasn't supposed to chase that, but there were others that had been suggesting a life better than the one he had here as a Jedi. Anakin's hands dropped, and he leaned forward. He was conflicted. The darkness hadn't fully consumed him, but it was slowly creeping into his skin. Anakin closed his eyes, and he heard a knock at the door. Obi-Wan's voice crawled through the metallic frame, as he told his student that it was time to go. They were heading to a Jedi outpost in the Mid-Rim to shut down. More budget cuts under Palpatine's administration. Anakin looked at the communicator and told Obi-Wan that he would be just a minute, before looking up to the door. Maybe Obi-Wan wasn't that bad. Okay, he wasn't bad, but still, wasn't there more in the galaxy for him? Surely, there had to be. Anakin wished Qui-Gon could bestow wisdom down unto him. Across the city, inside the works, Palpatine's skin was crawling. He hated the sensation of the light. Following the Battle of Naboo, he and young Skywalker had a very brief interaction. He told the boy that he would watch his career with great interest. At the moment of contact, Palpatine knew this boy was special. He eventually came to learn that Skywalker was the Jedi's proclaimed chosen one, a mythos that the Sith didn't believe in, just a Jedi legend, a hope for someone that would save the Force from the impurity of the Sith. Palpatine treaded across the rusty floors of the works and felt Skywalker's tugs. These were daily feelings. Palpatine first held excitement for the prospect of a future pupil. Obviously, with Maul being dead and Dooku mostly being a temporary pick, Sidious was excited at any chance to pick his first new student. That excitement slowly died out. Palpatine found someone that was already connected to him, something he and his master had done. The creation of Anakin Skywalker was a mistake. Sidious and Plagueis were trying to do two things. They were trying to master immortality, and they were trying to form a dyad through sheer force. Neither worked, and the Force itself therefore created Anakin Skywalker, a Virgins in the Force. Traditionally, a Virgins is a concentration of midichlorians in a specific area. It typically gives away more power and potential for the Force to work in mysterious ways. Planets, for example, could be a Virgins, but individuals were not to become such things. Anakin was such a thing. And because Anakin and Palpatine were both so directly and indirectly connected, the Force took it a step further. The Force didn't make it apparent that it was Skywalker, but it was something that bothered Palpatine ever since Skywalker's birth. Every time there was a pull to the light or the dark, Palpatine felt it. When he eventually connected the dots back to Anakin upon his arrival to Coruscant, he realized who it was. This forced Palpatine to be more focused on Skywalker than ever before, but even for him, it felt like an uphill battle. As a Sith, he was not supposed to lose his focus or his passion, but because Anakin was surrounded by Jedi, constantly learning about the Jedi, and he so happened to be connected to Palpatine, the Sith Lord was deterred from his focus. What this was were constant itches that couldn't be reached. Palpatine during the day or night would feel Anakin's movements within the Force. These were nothing more than little shocks. Most of the time, they were bright filled with joys and passions. Palpatine hated that because, as an evil man, there was nothing worse than the light side of the Force. As the days to weeks went on, and Skywalker learned more with the Jedi, Palpatine could feel Anakin's real power. Sometimes it would show during the day or when he was sleeping. All that mattered was that there were these little showings of what Anakin could become. And while for a Sith, the interworking of an individual could be seen as something to prey on, it was terrifying. For months, Palpatine was being led to believe that young Skywalker was becoming this monstrous force in the light, and while, to his validity, Skywalker was, he wasn't growing that fast, but the Force itself wanted to ensure that Palpatine paid the ultimate price for manipulating it and trying to force things into reality that were not meant to be. At this current and present moment, Palpatine was seething. He could sense Anakin's grief, and despite him trying to play on this grief and lack of focus, he couldn't. Anakin's mind was like a trap, and the Sith Lord was trying to find ways in. But there lay the main issue. Palpatine truly feared Anakin. Because there was a certifiable layer of fear, there was something that the Sith Lord worried about. If he couldn't turn Anakin, then he might not win this generational fight between Jedi and Sith. But Palpatine also couldn't just get rid of Anakin. As a master of the Force, and one who understands all the inner workings of it, Palpatine knew that if he disposed of Anakin, the Force would create another. He couldn't destroy or kill Anakin. In doing that, he was setting himself up to deal with another future chosen one. As Palpatine had already deduced, at the point before Anakin was conceived, there were 4 avatars of the Force: Mother Talzin, himself, Plagueis, and Yoda. Now that Plagueis was gone, there was the neutral dark, and the light. Skywalker was undetermined, and yet all these constant tugs towards the light proved to Sidious that the only way to truly get rid of Skywalker was a trap. If he couldn't be turned, he needed to find a way to eternally trap Anakin, but one couldn't do that to the Chosen One through conventional means. If he wanted to truly trap an individual that decided to slide into the light side of the Force, then he needed to make sure that said trap was a choice. But who would dare choose to be trapped? No one would want that, especially not a slave. Not a soul would desire the chance to be trapped inside an eternal hellscape. Palpatine walked over to Plagueis' books and opened them up. He had read through these a dozen times and again since he murdered his master in his sleep. There had to be a way through the Force to do this. That way would save him. Palpatine scanned through documents again and again, and then he saw it. He laughed to himself, an insidious cackle that echoed out across the chambers. His twisted fingers slid down the Sith page and landed on a singular word, a name. Not just any name, but the name of a planet, one called Lothal. Across the city, Skywalker was mounting up, preparing to go with Obi-Wan on yet another dreary mission. The two of them were about to go and shut down a local Jedi outpost on the system of Kal, just a jump and a half away from Eridu. Anakin sat down in the pilot's seat and smiled, hoping that his master would play along with the joke. Master Kenobi set some supplies down on the back of the ship and looked over. He smiled to himself. Anakin was waiting impatiently with his eyes on the viewport and his hands on the control yoke. Obi-Wan locked everything into place and walked over to the front. His hand lightly tapped the dashboard overhead of the captain's seat. He asked Anakin if he wanted to fly this trip, and Anakin looked over with a grin, one that said yes, and it was reciprocated with Obi-Wan's own smile. He slid down into the co-captain's seat and told his apprentice to be easy on the controls this time. He needed to remember. Before Obi-Wan could finish, the ship ripped to the side and sped out of the hangar bay. Luckily, they had confirmation of departure and no one was in the way. Obi-Wan held the handlebar above his head and watched Anakin shove the throttle all the way in before pulling back on the hyperspace gears once they exited the atmosphere and reached the hyperspace zone. Back inside the works, Palpatine smacked his hand against the wall. He murmured to himself, "That damn child." Every time there was a burst of light or excitement, the Force responded by torturing him. Foolish, foolish. Palpatine moved a couple books around, searching for more information on these hidden secrets at Lothal. What were they, and how could they access them? He had already sent Dooku to Lothal to deal with this side of things. Truth be told, Sidious didn't have an issue with Dooku being a potentially long-term student. He was controllable. He was also already influenced. His place was already established, but someone like Skywalker was worrisome. There was certainly no issue in the galaxy with being the strongest Sith. After all, that didn't really work out for Plagueis, but the point remained. Palpatine's quest for immortality and eternal life were in the way. He didn't want some boy born of the Force to steal his thunder. He just wanted Skywalker's powers to help him get the role he deserved. After all, what Palpatine feared wasn't the Anakin of the now. It was the Anakin of the future. Now that Dooku was going to Lothal, Palpatine's main focus was figuring out how to break past this light streak within Anakin. If he could be turned, then good. If not, then this trap would need to work. The seed of the darkness was planted. But the issue is, despite Anakin's own troubles with the dark side during his time as a Jedi, his bursts of light far outnumbered his bursts of darkness. Anakin may have been a troubled student, but that did not make him a bad Jedi. He wasn't the best, and he would never be, by their standards at least, but he could become a more powerful iteration of Qui-Gon Jinn, one that had a loose standing with the code but bound himself to the Jedi Order. It would be through this that Palpatine could be defeated. The only true fear that Palpatine had regarding any of his plans for the galaxy was Skywalker becoming another Qui-Gon Jinn. Out on Kal, Skywalker landed the T6 Jedi shuttle in a field of dust. Obi-Wan and Anakin popped up as Obi-Wan told a student that he did well, but they had to work on his landing sequences. Anakin asked why, and he watched Obi-Wan tip over in a dramatic way, one to act as if he were dizzy. Kenobi handed Anakin a backpack and slung another over his shoulders. They weren't wearing Jedi robes, just simply their tunics and lugging some extra supplies with them. As they walked out, they looked at a small city that was slowly becoming abandoned. Anakin and Obi-Wan had talked about this, but it was the same case as many other outposts on the edge of the Mid-Rim and on the verge of being consumed by Hutt space. Planets like Kal didn't have a standing in the current political affairs of the Galactic Republic. This planet would be forgotten. Many of the corporate offices that had stakes here had transferred up or down hyperspace lanes. Most of them went to Sullust or Eridu because they were established societies that wouldn't lose favor from Coruscant. The other location these businesses went to was Thifera, but only rich people or corporations could afford that because Thifera was smack dab in the middle of the Inner Rim. Regardless, regulations, lack of popularity, lack of funding, and total lack of interest from the Republic was driving people away from this planet and many like it. The outpost present on Kal had been a long-standing marker for the Order, but like it was during the era of Valorum, outposts were being closed down because they didn't have proper funding to support it. Anakin asked why Palpatine would do this, as his eyes landed on the town before them, and Obi-Wan looked over, patting Anakin on the shoulder. He didn't know. Political squabbling inside the Senate never had time for the likes of people of the galaxy. It was a sad state, but let them not worry about that now. The two Jedi walked into the town and saw people with despondent looks on their faces. Obi-Wan whispered to Anakin, telling him to help these people, reminding him of everything they brought with them. Master Kenobi was going to go to the outpost itself to remove the Elder and bring him back to Coruscant with the two Jedi. Obi-Wan had proposed to the Council that at the very least they remove these people from the planet, and when he arrived, he was glad he said that. The main town here was rusting. Without businesses to do upkeep, the harsh conditions of local storms were withering away what was once fine architecture. Obi-Wan frowned as he helped an elder man get some water before walking to the outpost itself. Across the galaxy, Palpatine could feel flickers of the light, and he got irritated. Skywalker was doing another one of those heinous mercy missions, surely. Maybe instead of trapping him, he should just kill him. Ugh, that wouldn't fix anything though. Anakin was sitting with a widow and talking to her while feeding some of her pets. This was both an eye-opening experience for Anakin, but also a show of why he chose the Jedi path. They were an order of 10,000, but they still found time for people like this in the galaxy. Obi-Wan spoke to the Rodian Jedi Master, the elder who oversaw these facilities. Master Nax tried so hard to keep this outpost alive, and his heart hurt over it. Inside, a number of crates were holocrons and books he had collected over the years. The Jedi Master grabbed his cane and walked around the outpost once more, as he spoke to Obi-Wan. The political status of the galaxy was unfavorable. If the Republic continued to do this, he wouldn't be surprised if an uprising really did come. It was here where the idea of a confederacy was floated over to Obi-Wan, but he didn't really take it with any legitimacy. Nax just shrugged his shoulders. Kenobi was young. He had seen Obi-Wan come here when he was Qui-Gon's Padawan. Time would prove Master Nax right. Until then, he wanted Obi-Wan to bring these crates to the shuttle, which Obi-Wan did. This mercy mission was hard on both Obi-Wan and Anakin. Despite the helpful feelings of giving people fresh food and water imported from Coruscant, it didn't make them feel much better. These people were still getting displaced because of this. That didn't feel good, but Anakin held nothing but love for these people in his heart. There was no vengeance, no rage, just hurt and care. He wished he could just wish away all their pain, but he couldn't. And this was the burden of being a Jedi. They weren't gods. They were people too, just people who had the ability to do something right. Master Nax would announce that the Jedi outpost was finally being shut down, after 200 years of service, and with it came the ceremony of concluding its service for the wider Jedi Order, and at that, the end of this town. As Master Nax was directed towards the shuttle the Jedi arrived on, he rejected, informing Kenobi to give a message to Yoda. Nax would take the Barash vow for himself. He would not return to the temple. He dedicated his life to Cal, and it would be here where it ended. He walked limply into the distance. It was hard. Many of the people felt his burden, but they couldn't afford to live the monk's life. A couple Corellian corvettes landed next to the T6 shuttle, and out from them came Republic medical personnel sent by the High Council. Anakin watched the Rodian Jedi Master become a small blip in the distance, before the woman he was talking to embraced him, thanking him for his kindness. Anakin tried to tell her he didn't do anything, but from the corner of his eye, he saw Obi-Wan smiling, holding the hands of a little girl who had just lost her parents to disease, and walking her to a Corellian corvette. She now had an adopted family here on Cal, but Obi-Wan looked just like her father, and she was telling him everything she could before she was taken to a new home world. Anakin looked back at her and smiled at the woman, telling her that he was honored to be able to be here for them. She smirked before walking towards the ship and being welcomed in by Republic medics. Eventually, the two corvettes left, and Obi-Wan and Anakin were left alone. He told his master that he thought he understood. Obi-Wan asked what he meant, and Anakin smiled with a tear in his eye. He finally understood what it meant to be a Jedi, and Obi-Wan wrapped his arm around Anakin's shoulder in an affectionate way, and told Anakin to tell him all about it as he flew them to Bestine. What was on Bestine? Anakin asked. Obi-Wan told him it was a surprise, but until then, it was up to Anakin to tell him about this trip and what it meant to him. The thing with Skywalker were these flashes of light. Not everything about being a Jedi was prideful for him. A lot of it was frustrating or irritating. Obi-Wan always tried to choose missions to encourage Anakin to see the better side of things, especially as a Jedi, but he was flustered often. His heart was still pure, and he felt tied to irritability. It was on these negative emotions that Palpatine tried to prey on. It just happened to really work on him, mostly because he wasn't ever around Anakin. Wonder why? Missions like these were keeping Anakin grounded to the Jedi. But this kind of emotion would last for a week or two, until he grew again in the Force or found something else to become annoyed with. Regardless, Dooku had just arrived on Lothal and found nothing. He had digging crews beginning their work, which was going relatively smoothly thanks to Trade Federation battle droids doing all the heavy lifting. In the meantime, the new senator of Naboo would be in for a surprise. Anakin was still attached to her. Palpatine was aware of this through a previous conversation, so the Sith were going to make sure she stayed dead. It was an odd play, but Palpatine thought it to be a worthwhile one. Out on Bestine, Obi-Wan and Anakin were sitting down at a sabacc table. Obi-Wan was celebrating Anakin's birthday early. They'd never get away with this on Coruscant, so he figured, why not? Skywalker was just a bundle of joy. He'd been practicing sabacc for years inside of his room, sometimes playing with the maintenance crew members from the hangar bay, but mostly alone. Obi-Wan sat back and watched his Padawan go nuts in the game. He was winning back-to-back games and having the time of his life. Kenobi and Skywalker were a strong duo. It just depended on the week that determined how strong. Anakin was having a fantastic time here, just jumping with joy over the entire game of sabacc. He was winning credits hand over fist, and because he was young and the birthday boy, people kept pushing him to keep betting, but he kept winning. When they were done playing, Anakin thanked Obi-Wan for such an amazing gift, and his master told him he earned it, even going as far as to apologize for not having more fun with him more often. But as his master, he had to be the instructor. Sometimes, though, they could let loose a little, just a little, and what better time to do it than his birthday? Anakin embraced his master and told him he'd be right back. As Anakin went to grab some food from the counter, he saw in the news something that shattered his heart. It was a news headline that read, "Newly elected Senator of Naboo, Padme Amidala, killed in an assassination." The reason Padme's death was such a big deal even out here on Bestine is because everyone knew who she was after the blockade of Naboo. Anakin's heart sank into his chest, and Obi-Wan, after a few odd minutes, eventually found a student who blankly stared at the screen. When Obi-Wan saw the news, he was horrified. He tried to get Anakin to leave, but it was almost impossible. Kenobi was able to get into contact with the Council in the following hours, and they dispatched the two Jedi, due to their proximity to Naboo and how familiar they were with it, to Naboo. They'd be sending additional reinforcements in the coming hours. Dooku, on Lothal, was having his own issues. Despite him uncovering a relic from the past, a mural with 3 faces of 3 gods, that he was unfamiliar with, he was having another problem. His master instructed him to open the mural, which wasn't something he was able to do as a dark-sided acolyte. As a Jedi, no problem. But Dooku was not Sidious, Plagueis, or Talzin. He didn't have the raw strength necessary to break open the world between worlds and see in. Not to mention the fact that there were currently no beings inside the dimensional plane, he couldn't just access it. So Dooku was struggling exponentially as a result. Sidious was en route to Naboo to help clean up the mess, since his alter ego Palpatine was quote-unquote in lockdown, in a safe location until the crisis dissipated. Dooku, as he was trying to open up the world between worlds, got caught in a rift. One that sent an electric shock through his body, crippling him and blasting him off into the vessel used to remove dirt and surrounding the mural. On Naboo, we're going to try something new, so bear with me for a quick immersion break. If you want to watch the dark side ending, keep watching. If you want to watch the light side ending, skip to this point. If you're watching the premiere, good luck. Lord Sidious arrived under the cover of his shuttle on Naboo, hiding in his family's old hangar bay within Theed. Obi-Wan and Anakin were walking towards the site of the explosion. Obi-Wan turned to his student and told him to go check in on the Queen. He'd go to the detonation. Anakin tried to resist, and Obi-Wan told his student that if there was something there, he didn't want his young student to be burdened with that trauma. He asked nicely if Anakin could follow his direction. Anakin nodded his head and apologized. He didn't want to play the nice game, but he was so emotionally frustrated that he did. He wanted to go and save Padme, but Obi-Wan was right. There was an explosion, and Padme's death might be one of the worst things he could encounter at this age. As Anakin ran towards the palace, a voice called out to him from the shadows. He slid and stopped. He looked over at a hooded man, who waved him over. Sidious, in a quiet, buzzing murmur, told the young 17-year-old that he could help him save his friend. How was this possible? Sidious told Anakin to come quickly. They didn't have much time to spare. Anakin stopped. He had to find the Queen. Sidious shook his head. This wouldn't take more than a few minutes. Anakin gritted his teeth and then agreed, picking up his pace to keep up with Palpatine, who scurried away into an alleyway and then down into a cellar that led to a Sith altar and a ritual room. It was once Palpatine's older brother's room, the basement dweller. Now the walls held remains of House Palpatine, and Sidious fed off their pleading souls to delve deeper into the dark side. Being that Dooku had failed to open the portal, Palpatine would not. His master had opened the world between worlds on numerous occasions. He was able to fabricate scenarios where the dimensional realm could give an individual the ultimate reality. But in exchange for that reality, their soul would be trapped for eternity, blissfully unaware of the carnage they had levied against the galaxy. Their singular choice, damning the people of the universe to Sith control and masterful insight into the Force and the future. Sidious told Anakin to come to his side as he spoke into the altar. A blue fire lit beneath his hands, and Sidious told Anakin exactly what to do. While there was a way to do this through the Jedi Temple on the Thal, Palpatine learned from Plagueis' methods. These methods wouldn't have been found if Sidious did not fear Skywalker. Sidious told Anakin that a small portal would arise from the ground before them. All Anakin needed to do is step through that portal and bring Padme to the other side. Skywalker stopped, asking the mysterious figure why he was doing this, and Palpatine told Anakin that he was a visionary. He had seen what would happen if Padme died. Her death would drastically impact the galaxy. Planets like Cal would continue to be forgotten under the plague of the Republic. She was the hope for change, the hope to avoid a galactic-scale conflict that could rip the galaxy apart. She was what the galaxy needed, what Anakin needed to save. Skywalker nodded his head. Surely it would be that simple. Go through, grab her, bring her back, and save her. Okay, simple. Anakin was emotionally reacting to the news Palpatine had just told him. It was the way to save her. If this figure could do it, then he would. Anakin looked back and told Palpatine that he wanted to thank him. Sidious shook his head. There was no time. He needed to do this now. It'd be impossible to maintain the operation of this portal so far away from its source. Anakin nodded, turning back and seeing Padme. Her face lit up. Little Annie, look at how grown up he was. She exclaimed with joy to see him. Anakin stepped forward with haste, and he was sucked in. When he entered, she was happy to see him. They were inside of her family's villa. Anakin told her they needed to go, and she asked what he meant. He had just arrived. Anakin turned back to point at the portal, but it wasn't there. What had he done? His eyes scanned the room, and a tremor of chills rolled down his spine. Everything was real, but it didn't feel that way. Padme told Anakin that he was welcome for dinner as she set up a table for him. She wasn't really real either, just a figment of the Force, a memory that hadn't yet happened and never would. Sidious had gained access to the portal between worlds, one that would allow him to have control over every major event in galactic history. He could change the past, but why do that? He didn't need to. The galaxy was now under his control. He wouldn't abandon his lair. No need. The Jedi would lose their chosen one. The Senate would lose Padme Amidala, and the Clone Wars were bound to begin. In the hours following Anakin's abduction, Obi-Wan would begin to worry that his student had run away. With Master Koth on location, Kenobi told the counselor that he would go and find Anakin. He hadn't reported in yet. Master Koth encouraged this, but Obi-Wan's search wouldn't result in a pleasurable find, because there would be no find. His last memories of Anakin would be playing sabacc and having fun, before rushing to Naboo to save their friend. Now Obi-Wan felt responsible for Anakin running away. He started to question himself. Maybe he was too harsh. Maybe he didn't understand Anakin's emotions. The worst part is, Obi-Wan didn't do anything wrong, and Anakin didn't run away. What happened was something that neither of them could have prepared for. A simple reaction that changed the fate of the galaxy for good. With Dooku recovering on Lothal, the Sith were in full force, and the Jedi Temple of Lothal was weeks away from being discovered by Sidious, giving him a stronger and tighter connection to the Force, and giving him the power to control it. What became especially apparent to Palpatine following Anakin's abduction was the pulses of light and dark that were no longer there. Anakin was not a burden on his mind or his heart anymore, and it felt liberating. The Sith Lord was free from Skywalker's constant fluctuation within the Force. With the Jedi beginning a search for Anakin, and the Naboo government installing Representative Jar Jar Binks as Padme's replacement, the real fun could begin with Sidious. To say it was a cakewalk for him was an understatement. He had a full grip on everything he wanted, and with the World Between Worlds portal being moved to Moraband where he could access it at will, the strength of the Force sat truly within his fingertips. Following Padme's assassination, Sidious would enter the World Between Worlds itself, and search for future events revolving around him, deciding on what to change and which to leave the same. With such a power, he could foresee a betrayal, a political disruption, a cause for concern. The first of these came from Mandalore, and it wouldn't be problematic until the Clone Wars, but Palpatine would leave the dimensional realm and create a message, one for Pre Vizsla. The entire intention of this message was to drag Mandalore into a civil war, one in which the Jedi would send representation. Palpatine would use the decision to further isolate them from the Republic, but not entirely. He just wanted to create distrust for them before the war started. All would go as planned. Vizsla would bite the bait hard, especially with the promise of a warrior Mandalorian society, welcomed within the Republic. It wouldn't be, and once the team was murdered inside of her own palace, Mandalore was actually welcomed into the Republic. A few years following their induction into the Senate, Mandalore would be wiped off the face of the galactic map by the Separatists. It was pretty funny though. Sidious was able to usurp the future leader of the Neutral Systems Coalition, install a fundamentally stupid hammerhead, and then have him and his entire race erased from existence. Mandalorians and Sith had their issues in the past. This one was for the ancient Sith. The Clone Wars themselves for Palpatine wouldn't drastically change. He would check on Anakin from time to time, who had by this point gaslit himself into believing that Padme never died and that he wasn't ever a Jedi or something. He didn't really know anymore. He just tried searching for answers, but none could be found. He was just perpetually trapped. Palpatine's destruction of the Jedi would come relatively swiftly, and with it would be the rise of a new Sith Order. Because he could predict Dooku never betraying him, Asajj was never betrayed and thrown out. Mother Talzin and the Sith never became enemies. Ventress remained a member of their order, and eventually, Darth Maul was discovered. What? He survived? He would be nursed back to health by his master. Without need for Skywalker, Maul was the perfect apprentice. Dooku did feel a little left out by this, but not enough to betray his master. Even to the end, and even without Anakin, Dooku was loyal until killed by Maul after Order 66. Asajj was therefore given a choice, and she chose the Sith, and so she stayed. When Order 66 did come, the Jedi were weaker politically, and Palpatine was prepared. With the World Between Worlds, he was able to prepare a political meeting just before the arrival of the Jedi, so they could be seen as the monsters they were. They came in trying to strip power away from the poor old Chancellor, the man who tried so desperately to take care of the Republic. This scenario was a bit messy, but Palpatine was able to kill the political rivals, kill the Jedi, and use Commander Fox as his savior. Like I said, a bit messy, but Palpatine made it work. Order 66 was not a temple raid, just an orbital bombardment, and then began the era of the Empire. As the Galactic Empire became the ruling party in the galaxy, there was no worry for Operation Necromancer. It did come with time and resources, but Palpatine was able to quell every single minute rebel plan. He would send Imperial commandos to every location. He had an answer for every political rival, and there was nothing that could stop him. The few Jedi that remained were hunted down by Maul, Asajj, and the Inquisitorius led by Grand Inquisitor. It was an untouchable Sith order, one in Palpatine's name, and as the Empire continued to stretch out across the galaxy, Palpatine prepared for every last fight. The Death Star would be built, with the second one being the construction of Starkiller based on Ilum. Neither of these would see true competition or fighting until about 100 years after the fall of the Jedi Order and the end of the Clone Wars. The Empire at that point was strong. Emperor Palpatine had his new body, and the Sith Order was reborn through a different means. Maul and Asajj had aged out, and a new generation were born in. This generation created through clone strand casts, either through biological creation with non-clones or simply clones that were functional enough to survive. Sidious's empire was eternal, and following years of unprecedented peace, an imperial war machine built of 2 planet-destroying weapons, hundreds of Zyston-type Star Destroyers, and various other hellish vessels of the Empire, they were able to clobber an alien fleet from a dead galaxy. The Yuzang Vong came in and thought trampling Palpatine would be a walk in the park, but it wasn't. They got steamrolled, and it was precious, just like Lord Sidious's eternal empire. And that, my friends, leads me into the light side story. Lord Sidious arrived under the cover of his shuttle on Naboo, hiding in his family's old hangar bay within Theed. Obi-Wan and Anakin were walking towards the site of the explosion. Obi-Wan turned to his student and told him to go and check on the Queen. He'd go to the detonation. Anakin tried to resist, and Obi-Wan told his student that if there was something here, then he didn't want his young student to be burdened with that trauma. He asked nicely if Anakin could follow his direction, and Anakin nodded his head, apologizing. He didn't want to play this nice game, but he was so emotionally frustrated that he kinda had to. He wanted to go and save Padme, but Obi-Wan was right. There was an explosion. Padme's death might be one of the worst things he could ever encounter at this age. As Anakin ran towards the palace, a voice called out to him from the shadows. He slid and stopped. He looked at the hooded man, who waved him over. Sidious, in a quiet, buzzing murmur, told the young 17-year-old that he could help him save his friend. How was this possible? Sidious told Anakin to come quickly. They didn't have much time to spare. Anakin stopped. He had to find the Queen. Sidious shook his head. This wouldn't take more than a few minutes. Anakin gritted his teeth and then agreed, picking up his pace to keep up with Palpatine, who scurried into an alleyway and then down into a cellar that led into a Sith altar and ritual room. It was once Palpatine's older brother's room, the basement dweller. Nowadays, the walls held the remains of House Palpatine, and Sidious fed off their pleading souls to delve deeper into the dark side. Being that Dooku had failed to open the portal, Palpatine would not. His master had opened the world between worlds on numerous occasions. He was able to fabricate scenarios where the dimensional realm could give an individual the ultimate reality, but in exchange for that reality, their soul would be trapped for eternity, blissfully unaware of the carnage they had levied against the galaxy. Their singular choice, damning the people of the universe to Sith control and masterful insight into the Force. Sidious told Anakin to come to his side, as he spoke into the altar. A blue fire lit beneath his hands, and Sidious told Anakin exactly what to do. While there was a way to do this through the Jedi Temple on Lothal, Palpatine learned from Plagueis' methods. These methods wouldn't have been found if Sidious didn't fear Skywalker. Sidious told Anakin that a small portal would arise from the ground before them. All Anakin would need to do is step through said portal and bring Padme out to the other side. Skywalker stopped, asking this mysterious figure why he was doing this, and Palpatine told Anakin that he was a visionary. He had seen what would happen if Padme died. Her death would drastically impact the galaxy. Planets like Cal would continue to be forgotten under the plague of the Republic. She was the hope for change, the hope to avoid a galactic-scale conflict that could rip the galaxy apart. She was what the galaxy needed, what Anakin needed to save. As Skywalker stepped forward, he realized something. This couldn't be right. All of his emotions were sending him into the unknown void. But what he didn't know was if this was right. Who was this guy? For all he knew, this figure could be a Sith. Anakin looked down and then over to Padme, who appeared before him. She called out to him. Little Annie had grown so much. She was so happy to see him. Skywalker couldn't believe it. She was right there. His heart tugged him forward, but he caught himself. Something wasn't right. His gut had planted him right here for a reason. That had to mean something. There was something wrong about this entire scenario, and he had to see it. Anakin couldn't just ignore it. He looked back to Palpatine, who waited eagerly, but there was something else. Because this portal wasn't directly connected to the temple from Lothal, bridging the gap into the world between worlds was especially difficult. Using the dark side of the Force to open the portal felt like ripping his arms off. Palpatine was trying to appear casual, but it was slowly fading. Impatience was filling up his mind as his body started to break. Anakin shook his head. He tried speaking to Padme and he apologized. Padme nodded her head, telling him it was okay. Her smile lit his heart and he wanted to join her, but he was a Jedi. He had been through all of this struggle and he wouldn't give it up for false hope, one that could do any number of unknown things. Anakin turned around and threw his hand forward. A shockwave collided between light and dark, and the altar under Palpatine's hands started to shatter. Sidious tried to hold the portal open and shove Anakin in it, while maintaining the structure of the altar, but it was too much for him. He cried out in agony, as the Force started to shred his limbs from the inside out. The darkness was too much even for him. Anakin's face scrunched up in pain as he threw his other hand forward, trying to force an explosion to claim the life of this mysterious being. Like his master before him, Anakin Skywalker would too extinguish the Sith on Naboo. Luckily for Anakin, Sidious would not somehow return, like Darth Maul. Anakin was thrown across the room and into the wall as he saw Palpatine crowd in agony as his body was consumed by electricity, blue fire, and debris from the building crushing down on top of them. Due to the massive explosion, a fire ripped out across the house and sent a burst of light into the sky. Anakin saw Padme look at him with pureness in her eyes, before she vanished from his life for forever. Obi-Wan was drawn to the scene of the explosion because the culprit might be nearby. Instead, he had to dig through the rubble to find his apprentice? How could that be? Obviously, Anakin wasn't the culprit, but Obi-Wan was very confused on why he was involved with an explosion. When Anakin came to, days later, he was just as confused. Was it all a dream? What actually happened on Naboo? Questions had been circulating because Palpatine was found dead with Anakin, a Jedi, but Anakin was under the rubble. Palpatine emerged first, dead. There were also talks or rumors about a Jedi plot against the Naboo, but the Queen, for Save the Queen, didn't believe the Jedi were behind this. She knew the Jedi worked closely with Padme and would never want her or Palpatine harmed. The Council was brought in, with various experts to explore the area, all the while. Due to his injuries on the other side of the galaxy, Dooku would perish, with Council investigators scanning the debris and finding Sith relics, an altar, and remnants of a swirling twist in the Force. Something had happened here, obviously. It was like a wound in the Force, but lesser. Somehow Anakin and Palpatine or Palpatine had been involved in a ritual to break something open, but no one could figure out what. When Anakin woke up, he explained what he saw, telling them it was a portal or a ghost or something. He wasn't really sure. The Jedi gathered around him and tried to find an answer for why this happened, especially one that would make sense to the public. As a result of the Jedi being involved in Palpatine's magic-related death, the Jedi were brought back to Coruscant to testify in front of an angry Senate. But Master Yoda sided with Skywalker, believing that an anomaly in the Force had disrupted Anakin's interaction with whoever was trying to manipulate him. Yoda didn't want Anakin to be at the Senate hearings, but he was forced to be. With help from the current Queen of Naboo and the High Council, the Jedi were able to get off with a slap on the wrist, which was another oversight committee led by Masameda. With worry of a potential plot to disrupt the lines of time, the Jedi Council sent members out to known locations of portals to the world between worlds. On Lothal, one of the many worlds they went to, they'd find a Trade Federation Earth mover, and under it, it was a ground base set up for Dooku. There was the Count of Sereno, his body under a cloth. He had passed away from his injuries. Despite the Sith, aside from the still alive Spider Sith Darth Maul being gone, Anakin started to face struggles. After the incident with Palpatine, his mind was imbued with knowledge beyond his comprehension. As punishment to the Sith, Anakin's visions, like that of Sifo-Dyas's, were more advanced than any other Jedis in the Order. This was done to prevent the Sith from ever returning. Skywalker was terrorized by nightmares that confounded him. And of course, there were the dreams of what had happened during his final encounter with Padme on Naboo, before she was gone forever. Politically, the ramifications of Palpatine's death would be a political Cold War. It wouldn't really result in anything more than that. Newt Gunray was convicted under new leadership in the Senate, and the rest of the would-be Separatist Council was too cowardly to actually try and start something without true leadership. In the Senate, it would take decades for true legislative change to come. It would come following Mandalore's alignment with the Republic, and a representative from Clan Kryze stepping up to the stand. It would be Bo's eventual son who represented Mandalore, and like his aunt, He would take the stand as the Republic's voice of reason as their eventual chancellor. Skywalker would still train Ahsoka, but it would come a little later. Yoda would take Anakin to a multitude of Force-attuned worlds with Obi-Wan, so that they could experience a true connection to the Force. This connection helped Anakin overcome his nightmares and really refine a curse into a gift. His knowledge of future events would turn him into the seer of the Jedi Order, assisting him with his eventual ascension into the High Council. While he would become one of the most important voices in the Order, it would be on Dagobah where he felt the most comfortable, because it was there where he could have his conversations with Master Qui-Gon Jinn, the Jedi who always understood him most, the one who always kept an eye on him, as Anakin Skywalker became a voice for the future of the Jedi Order. And that, my friends, is our story. Again, special thanks to all the patrons: Benjamin Wells, Ozpin, Darth Vitiate, Seju Jagger, Root36, Hunter Belden, Rosebird, Angel Dust, Alexander Reese, The Beginning and End, Jango Fett Clone, Nick5098, Ben Ingram, The Big Red Pure Mark, Diamond Constant, Darth Nemesis, Lord Tib, CC2024, Gallivan Gaming, Tristan, Mandalore, Sir William 1767, Darth Revan, Granite D. Bane, Laliant, Sky Guy, Penguin, Cullen Rooney, Shark McDory, RJ38, Nick, Michael Erlinger, The Last Jedi, Apollo, Weewa670, Annika Stank Runner, CT7567, Toaster Oven, Oz of Oz, Darth Nox, The Eternal Padawan, Joshua Tem, Johnny DeGuin, Sense Skeleton, Jedi Sloth, Mr. Yeet Gamer, Lord Callie, Youngling Slayer 66, Mammoth Studios, Anakin003, Lord Draken, Fortis Lakes of Star Wars, Erebus, Rex the Wolf, The Man with 3 First Names, Darkseid46, Baron Joshua, and Lord Deadwing. For supporting the channel, smash that like button. Let's talk about this story. What? An alternative ending? That's crazy. Anyways, tell me what you thought about that. The idea of getting Palpatine to actually fear Anakin was really hard to do. He is Palpatine, he's kind of him, he's like the ultimate Sith Lord. I think the only way to really get that is by him getting tremors of the light consistently. I think that'd be something that would really kind of rustle his jimmies. And I think it's on that would really push him to become paranoid in a way. The mission that Anakin and Obi-Wan went on is kind of like something that I want to believe is something that they would have done. Some kind of moment where they really felt that true bond. I think Obi-Wan and Anakin are a really strong dynamic. I think what we didn't see between Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones are these moments where they're really strong together and where they're really separated from each other. Like, they have this really strong bond, but it breaks and then is reborn consistently. So it's like this constant cycle for them. And I wanted to focus on a mission where they're both like kind of really acting at their best and working their best with each other. And that's what that mission to Cal is. Anyways, I hope you all enjoyed. Fun story. Let me know what you thought of the whole alternate ending thing. Anyways, love you all, spread the love, and always remember, my friends, may the Force be with you.